Welcome, everyone. Uh, Thank you, Sophia. Hand raised. It's good to see your faces. Again, I apologize. I can't see everyone, but it looks like a wonderful group again. And I'm excited to do this last part 4 of Saikontan. And I'll get right into it because we've got lots to cover. And you know me, I tend to run late. Mailbox first, because I always want to thank you. I don't get this much feedback, so I'll have to come up with some other topic to continue to engage you. This time, I heard everything from rhythm, questions about rhythm from musicians, thank you, Mort, and everything in between, but a bunch on Kino Kenko. So some of you might remember, in fact, we had 60 participants in 2007. Do you remember this manual? Kino Kenko means key for health. And on pages, I think 60 of you have it, if you still have it. We did it a long time ago, but that was the year-long program where we went into the interdisciplines. And on pages 298 to 370 are the same exercises but in manuscript form, in abbreviated form, because the book was not yet published, but we did include those exercises because we were trying to do, focus in key in daily life. That question made me correct yet one more. It seems each time I have to correct myself, and I want to, since these are recorded and I want to be accurate. Last time, remember, I was talking about Toi Sensei's insistence, well, of course, that you have to be able to do it, not say it. That was his realization reading Saikontan in bed with pleurisy for a year. Sorry, I didn't turn off my email there. So at that time, I remembered that, it was the big project that we were leading up to was the 5-year project to move the temple, Eiji, the place of peace, from Nagoya to our campus. And as soon as that project was dedicated, that is, we were in full swing in 2007, it was dedicated in 2008. And I just remembered, when I went to Beijing, Hong Kong, and Taipei on that traditional Chinese medicine thing, it was after some big project where I finally could free myself to do it, this long-standing interest. And so that all happened, again, Roger Ames, November in Beijing and December, and then the medical school invited me back, but it was 2008, 2009, so I was off because last time I was thinking, the big project was to finish this book and give it to Kaicho Sensei and Toi Sensei for review. So I stand corrected on those dates. All right, we have a lot to cover, and it's impossible to cover, a 400-page book, but I don't have to because that's not the purpose of the call. The purpose of the call is to continue to lay bare the influence of Saikontan. So one way to go through the book, which I've done before, based on chapters, you could see that, we've started this EKF YouTube channel, and thank you, Matthew Atarian. But there's an interview there that's an hour and a half in the category called Interviews and Presentations. And I think the title of it is Who is Koichi Tohei Sensei and What are the 4 Basic Principles? In that hour and a half podcast, I go through Living with the Wind at Your Back with an organization on chapters. So that's available. So we won't do it now. The other thing that I like about the book is these invitational questions called Have You Ever Wondered? There's 110 of them, and I went ahead and asked Freiling Sensei if he would simply send those to you, because I think it's interesting. I think you just sit there, read through the questions, and go, yeah, I've thought about that before. I wonder how I would answer that question. And that's the whole point, to make an invitational book. But since we're focusing on you have to be able to do it, not just say it, then I'm choosing to focus on the 14 exercises because that will lay bare the influence of Saikontan much more clearly. We started these calls when this pandemic started and we all couldn't train, the first one. And I think I called it like pandemic lockdown, your life is your monastery. And I said, you know, my gut is to go with the basics of the basics of the basics. So this whole theme has kind of evolved out of that, because I said, you know what, Toi Sensei talks about the application of living with key principles in the second half of Key in Daily Life. Well, those first chapters that we've gone through, getting up, sleep, the subconscious, and then the simple way, and then eating, all of that is right out of Saikontan. So I bet if you go back after hearing these 4 sessions and reread that, you'll go, oh, I have a little bit more of an insight maybe of where Toi Sensei was coming from. Okay, that's my whole point, just to share personally something about our founder, Koichi Tohei Sensei. So can you imagine trying to put together some exercises, in this case it was 14, that might be the kaisho of applying Key in daily life? Well, these exercises that I'm going to describe to you are completely available to us at all times. You don't have to pay dues. There's no equipment. There's no special building. You don't need a special field, a court, a gym, a dojo. Wherever you are, that's all you need, because you're doing the things that I'm going to talk about today anyway. So all you have to do is think about your life and your decisions differently, more mindfully. In other words, what we've been talking about throughout is noticing the difference. So I'd like to give a little bit of a framework for this before we get started. I've mentioned that in Saikontan, this literature, these Chinese literature, these poems have a rhythm in their original language. That's why they're so hard to translate. But our life has a rhythm, and the universe has a rhythm. And so we have to choose, are we going to get on that rhythm, or are we going to go against the grain? And so I think I titled this, is life happening to you, going against the grain, or is life happening for you because you have a plan and you're living your life mindfully in accordance with your Tenshoku? So I keep talking about this Tenshoku. That's where you have to start. And I would recommend that a life that is most meaningful is going to be a life of service. So when you begin thinking about what is your mission, what does heaven have in mind for you? What's your Tenshoku? I think it should be something more than yourself. It should have something to do with serving others in a greater picture. And that's what Toi Sensei did. It started out, wow, I want to learn how to become one of these triple sages outlined in Saikontan that he so loved. But he struggled with the how. But remember, he wasn't just thinking, I want to do it. He said, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't my life be most meaningful if I could find a path, a how to let everyone live in ways that maximize their quality of their life, that help them to be the best they can be on their terms. So I want you to think about something. Every day, whether you think about it or not, there are 3 decisions you're making, either consciously or unconsciously. They are this: what are you going to focus on? What does it mean? And what are you going to do? Why are these important? What are you going to focus on? If you focus on it, you're going to feel it. And that's important. You want to focus on things that give you a feeling that is inspirational to you. Because when you're talking about real habit formation that is changing deep habits, you have to think strategically. And I will tell you that if you are emotionally connected to the goal, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to be successful because there's a kind of passion behind it. So what you focus on is how you're going to feel. It's going to be what you're going to feel. Okay, what does it mean? Well, we give meaning to things all the time. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what is the meaning? What is the emotion that I am associating to this thing that I'm focusing on? That's your X. I'm focusing on an X. What does it mean for you? What kind of emotional connection do you have? Because if you do have an emotional connection, that meaning will help you to create the destiny that you want. And then the next one is, what are you going to do? When you're trying to change a behavior or break a habit, it's scary. You know, I always mention to people, I think of the old Star Trek, to boldly go where you've never gone before. That is, you have to step over a line to a place that you haven't been, because you're constructing new habits. And because it's scary, let's just say you're trying to stop smoking. Okay, so the benefit that you might put into your emotion is, what would a life be like without my addiction to nicotine? And if that feels good to you, that's going to help you to step over that line every time you have a craving for a cigarette. Okay, what are you going to focus on? What does it mean? And what are you going to do? It's just take action, and then steer correctly if you're going down a wrong path. But don't be stuck. Don't get stuck into non-action just because you're trying to change a significant habit or improve the quality of your life. Okay, with those three questions, now I would say, if you're going to get to a destiny, the first thing you have to know is, where are you? That's why when you walk into a shopping mall, right, you walk not more than 100 feet, and there's going to be this big billboard, and there's going to be a star right there, and you're going to say, oh, this is a map of the shopping mall, and the red star is, you are here. So if you're going to get to a destination, you have to be pretty accurate and understand, where am I really, truthfully, honestly, as I begin this journey? So I would ask you to ask yourself 3 questions relevant to the 3 I just asked. Do you tend to focus more on what you have or what's missing? Some people who are thinking, oh, high performers, they probably think about what's missing, because they're going to go out and get it. They're going to use their passion and their will and go do that. And that would be a mistake. Because if you focus every day on what's missing, you're creating an emotion of sadness, of maybe fear, of anger, and without your knowledge, you are putting that into your subconscious mind. You're actually creating negative feelings by focusing on what you don't have rather than what you have. I struggle with that myself, right? But I know I'm way better off if I'm focusing on what I have. Why? Because a different emotion comes up, gratitude. Now I'm giving meaning to what I'm focusing on, and I'm feeling gratitude, which helps me to be calm and appreciative, and now really accept the new experiences come my way with a completely different perspective. And I can notice myself if I'm focusing on what I don't have or what I have. It makes a big difference. You just have to keep reminding yourself. The next one is, do you tend to focus on what you can control or not control? If you're focusing on what you can't control, once again, you're creating an emotion of anger, sadness, what you don't have. But if you focus on what you can control, now you're taking responsibility for your destiny. And Toi Sensei talks about that in terms of, if you can focus on what you can control, now the self-improvement process can continue, because you're taking responsibility for not only your conscious mind, but your subconscious mind. And the third question I would ask you to check in on in terms of how do you focus is, do you tend to focus on the past, the present, or the future? People tend to get stuck when they're focusing too much on the past, problems, things that didn't go right. But if you focus on the present, obviously in our training, we know, oh, that would be better. Because what is the past? The past doesn't exist. It's simply your present memory. And the future doesn't exist either. It's just your present hopes, dreams, and ambitions. But the future you have to think about, because if you want to go north, right, then you need to face north and go in that direction. So this idea of personal development, you know, Toy Sensei was very interested in this. Some people, I think, have cast him as, oh, that's too pedestrian. He's out there for enlightenment. And I will tell you, my understanding of Toy Sensei the person is that that may be a consequence if you really train yourself deeply, but he's interested in just helping to improve the quality of people's lives, because you can be taught in 30 minutes how to unify your mind and body and experience the difference for yourself. It's pretty huge. Okay, I'm gonna run through these arts now. So if you have these one-page sheets, now's the time to bring them out, because I'm going to refer to them and hopefully you have them. If you don't have them, then you can make them available later, watch the recording, and then you'll still be able to do it. But time wouldn't permit us to go through these by doing screen share, and also the type is too small because the pages are full. So on this first page, I'm going to go through the logic first. Okay, the first one, the exercise one, is for you to create what I call a personal development affirmation. That's just an affirmation, kind of like when we talked about before you go to bed and you look in the mirror, and Toy Sensei was talking about a strong suggestion in Key in Daily Life. That's what this is. What is the affirmation that is going to be your tenshoku? So the way these are listed is, and you can follow along, each one I ask the same questions, because Toy Sensei was very logical, should be reasonable, and should be easy to follow. So what am I gonna do? Why should I do it? Where is your mind? Which Toy Sensei always asked. How do you feel? Which Kaicho Sensei always asks. What did I learn? And why did I do this? These arts are going to be progressive. So the first one is rather obvious. You need to create a goal. You know, we've been saying for all these classes, Toy Sensei would say, you have to be able to do it, not just say it. Well, guess what? We've never said, what's the it? What is the it that you're talking about? Well, the it now in the logic of these exercises, the it is your tenshoku. What is that affirmation? What is that goal that you want? So you want to be able to do that goal. In other words, realize your dreams, not just say it and then flounder because you can't figure out a process to get there. Okay, so the idea is you don't want to be the bobber. This is right out of Saikontan, being pushed around by the waves of your environment. That would be like somehow these arrows of third order, second order, etc. You know, you're feeling like a victim and life is happening to you. So the idea here is put a stake in the ground, think deeply, and in the book I talk about this in great depth, how to craft a good PDA that you can use. But the whole idea is you have to start somewhere and you need a goal. So I'm going to read here from where it says, where is your mind? Intentional living, okay, that's what we've been talking about. That's what Toy Sensei and I agreed when I was at Uchideshi and I was teaching him about phenomenology. And he said, oh yeah, like consciousness is always directed. So intentional living requires defining goals with milestones that can be experienced each day. Set your sights on your higher aspirations, define your North Star, and establish waypoints to know you are on track and progressing daily. Because you're going to be faced with choices all day long. How do you know if your choice is consistent with your tenshoku, or you're actually making a choice? And if you think about it, you're actually making a choice that's inconsistent with what you say you really want to do. How do you feel? I'm going to go through this one in more detail just so you get the feel of it. Remember when I said when Toy Sensei was sick in the hospital, and then at home, recovering for a full year. He had a palpable change of his emotional, mental, and physical state when he was reading Saikontan. That's what he fell in love with. That's why he memorized it. But I want to remind you, when you change your state, guess what we talk about in Aikido class all the time? Posture. Shisei. Toi Sensei said, you know, I would sit up in bed. I felt energized, and I read the book. And I think I told you before, and then I put the book down, and reflecting back, he'd say, you know, I could feel my posture collapse. That's what I mean by getting emotionally excited about a PDA that resonates with you. Because Toi Sensei said, you know what? I felt differently when I was reciting Saikontan in my head. And because I memorized it, I could bring this spirit, this feeling with me at all times. So it's about getting that palpable feeling that you're really on a mission that's going to make a difference in not only your life, but other people's lives. So that's that new posture, that new standard. So if you can feel the difference when you're resonating with a goal, that's important, because throughout the day, you're going to know. You have to begin to identify that mental, physical state, which is a state of unified mind and body. Okay, so why did I do this? Obvious. The likelihood of achieving a meaningful personal development goal is enhanced when your direction is clear. I used to tell all my clients, you know, clarity is power. If people don't know what counts in a business or an organization, how are they going to know what's on strategy or off strategy, right? It's the same thing, you know, trying to improve the performance of a company, really. All right, the second art. Checking the time. You have this available to you all the time. Just take a few moments. In the book, I say, take 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes sometime during the day, and 5 minutes at night. And imagine you're just a true beginner, right? You have the power of 1, but we're going to do these exercises and hopefully get the 9 to make 10. Well, you always have available the possibility of silence. No equipment, no gym. Just be quiet. Just be quiet. Because for a person who hasn't done any breathing or meditation before, like just think of students that come to your dojos. I'm assuming almost all of you know breathing and meditation, and you've certainly tasted it, and in some cases for decades. But for a new person, just sitting quietly is a huge experience that they can tap into. Why? Well, why should I do it? Saikontan. Learn to be calm and still. Remember, that was the beginning. Toi Sensei is always saying, if you just let the bath water alone, it's going to become mirror-like. So what are we doing here? We're stopping the chatter, the constant mental chatter of third-order body-mind awareness. Here's another Saikontanism right here in this description of exercise number 2. I'm reading from Where Is Your Mind? Just as music is made possible by silent spaces between the notes, the universal rhythm played around you cannot be heard unless the constant chatter of mental notes can first be observed. Silence is the voice of the universe. Do you remember the Saikontan passage that I walked you through? The book without words, first order. The lyre without strings, first order. So what you're doing, just like Saikontan, is giving you the opportunity to taste something other than the habit mind of constantly projecting and not being able to hold your attention very long. And most people are like that, like 99.9% of the time. Unless you become intentional about where are you focusing and how are you focusing, and develop the skills to actually sustain that focus, most people just kind of live with a monkey mind. That's not a criticism, that's just a description. So this is just a basic building block exercise of silence, pretty easy for all of you to understand. So let's go to the third exercise that builds on silence. This is one of three exercises that I call having to do with self-honesty. There's this one. So this is like a college, what do you call it? The catalog. This is self-honesty 101. But exercise 6 is going to be self-honesty 202, like second year, sophomore year. And exercise 13 is going to be self-honesty 303, like a much deeper dive. But just like going from 5th Q, 4th Q, 3rd Q, here is an opportunity to begin to build on those moments of silence. So what am I asking you to do? We all talk to people every day. Again, you don't need any extra equipment. You're doing these things anyway. So how about this? Try to be mindful. Notice whether or not when someone is speaking, you're already thinking ahead about what you're going to say in response. Or notice when you're speaking, responding to someone, what if your speech is reactive? Like, use a moment of silence, take a breath, and think before you speak. That's exercise number 3. Just try to run some interference from this constant habit of busy, 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 busy. And you know what you're learning? Saikontan, self-control. That's the characteristic of the triple sage that, remember, you start with the Junsu at 15 and all the way till 70 years old. It's a lifetime journey. But this is learning along the way self-discipline and self-control. So what you want to do is speak mindfully. You want to speak consciously, intentionally. So what you're really learning how to do is change your state before you speak. So I'm jumping down to how do you feel? When you pause before speaking, notice the weight of every part of your body changes and now naturally rests underside. Can you feel calm and centered, if only for a moment? This living calmness can become a new reference point from which to act. It can become a resource for intentional living. But all you have to do is notice. You just have to stop the habit of reactive speech. It's simple, but it's hard to do because you have to focus on it. And that's why I'm trying to give little exercises that you can do all day long that are not only consistent with key principles, but amazingly, as I was going through this in preparation for today, there's like Saikontan all over it. So, what's the posture? Say she's living calmness, but she say, what's the posture consistent with just take a breath, be silent, just for a moment before you speak, and notice how you change, because that becomes a new reference point. Kaicho Sensei talks about a new standard. Are you really keeping one point, or is it lower? Are you really calm, or are you kind of iffy? All this is about turning your life into a monastery. You have opportunities to self-correct all day long. We talk about, yes, key in daily life, or in the dojo. Yes, don't forget to apply key principles. But do we ever think about, well, what actually does that mean? Does it just mean, not making an argument worse? You realize you're in an argument and then you keep one point. What I'm trying to do is give you guidelines to say, there are ways to put this into your life all over the place. Okay, so we're just breaking that reactive habit. Oh, by the way, in Saikontan, these habits are stored in your storehouse consciousness. What Toi Sensei talks about in Plus Life, the Shokushu, but it's in Saikontan earlier. I think I shared that with you. So what we're doing is we're putting in clear drops. Suppose your consciousness is a bath water and it's dirty. Those are the bad habits. And you're putting in 1 drop of clear water because now you're mindful that you're stopping this reactive speech. You could be doing this for a month and the whole bathtub is so big and you can only put in 1 drop at a time. Maybe it looks the same, but don't be discouraged, because in 6 months of putting in clear drops, you are beginning to change your subconscious mind, and you're going to see why that's so important and why was it in the very first section of Key in Daily Life when it comes to applying this in your life. Because Toi Sensei has this model of this triple sage. And the triple sage, their subconscious mind, their conscious mind, subconscious, and unconscious mind, shall we say, has become purified, consistent with the first order experience, where you're no longer projecting judgment and analysis. Let's keep going because there's exercises. Oh, you know what you're doing also? I've showed you this before. When you put yourself in check, all you're doing is asking yourself, what's my state? How am I? Right? That's what we mean by reflexivity. You're turning yourself into the object of your consciousness and you're checking, am I upper side or underside? Am I speaking reactively or not? You just have to call it to mindful attention. Okay, I am so far behind, it's not funny. Imagine that. Talk about habits. Okay, exercise 4. You know, one of the translators said, you know, Saikontan is easy to understand if you just, you know, have ears to hear and eyes to see. Well, what about this eyes to see? Every day you have an opportunity to just sit quietly and observe other people. You're in a park. You see a family with children at the playground. You're taking a break from work and you're sitting on a bench outside the office. Whatever it is, can you just sit and just observe? Ask yourself, what do I see? I'm looking at an interaction with people. That's easier because that's dynamic. So your mind has a thread, all right, to follow, because your mind wants to move. Just like, why do we focus on breath? Why do we say half, half, half? Same thing. The object of your X is dynamic. So just kind of create a picture of observing people. And what are you doing? You're taking a first step in learning how to get out of your own way. So just observe them without your projection and judgment. It may take some time for you to just kind of become aware of how much judgment or analysis am I adding to it. I'm not actually seeing what's actually just going on. I'm creating a story in my mind about, oh, this couple over here, they look romantic, or this couple over here, it looks like one of them is hurting somehow. Just stand back, because what you're learning to do is to break the habit of your subconscious habits getting in the way of just seeing. The other thing it's doing is it's helping you to extend ki. In other words, you're projecting like kakudai ho. You're not looking at tunnel vision. You're just trying to observe the whole context, the environment. So it's kind of a baby step, a very simple step that's going to help you to interrupt the habits of your mind that are constantly creating your storehouse consciousness. You can't not create your storehouse consciousness. That's why if you change your intentions consciously, over time, you can actually lay bare those things that are causing you to act in certain ways that you're not even mindful of. But it's possible to take control of this. And this is what Toi Sensei means by discipline and self-control. It's also why he really idolized that triple sage, because the triple sage are living in harmony with the universe. They're fulfilling their destiny. They're fulfilling their tenshoku, and they're serving others in the process. Number 5. This is a great one. We talk about it all the time. I think Rich Freiling Sensei even did a little video on this. Multitasking is a myth. Let's just throw it out the door. It's an overrated thing. Oh yeah, multitasking. Like, we're so great, we can do multiple things at once. You can't. You're doing all of them poorly and without mindful attention. So can you in your daily life, you know, what are the requirements for Shodan, right? The criteria. Shisei, posture, shisen, eye line, right? Your connection, intense connection, and ma'ai, space. Okay, every human interaction, you can apply those 3 criteria of Shodan when you're just having a conversation. Ileana and I go back and forth on this all the time, by the way, so I'm not saying I'm great at this. I have learned, however, do not interrupt her when she's practicing, because you've heard her play. It's intense. You don't just walk up and say, hey, I had a question. Like when she's engaged, and I know she's going through a piece, not just learning or whatever, I know the difference, do not interrupt her, because she can't possibly give her attention to you. Okay, I'm not a pianist and I can't do that, but when I get in my computer and I'm composing and I'm writing something, I'm just as intense into it. And when she comes in and asks for something, I have to practice and discipline myself to just, okay, get out of where I was, just do that. And don't just talk to her with my back to her, because that's not shizen. Shisen, right? Eye line. You need to turn, face the person, and look at them. This is giving them, you're in the dojo, uke nage, you're doing a taigi, you're looking at them, right? You're taking a ki test. It's a pretty basic thing. Why don't you do that in daily life? Because we forget, because we have a habit of discounting people, especially those closest to us. We have a habit of completing their sentences before they're done. And oh boy, if you did that with Toi Sensei, he would not be a happy man. But we do it all the time with our loved ones. And so I catch myself, but it's just learning how to notice. Okay, so this is a second step in getting out of your own way. Exercise 6. This is self-honesty 202. In exercise 3, remember we said take a breath before we speak. This one is take a breath before you act. And what are you going to think about in those moments of silence when you're thinking of acting? You're going to think about your tenshoku, your PDA, your personal development affirmation. Before you act, ask yourself, if I do this thing, is that consistent with my PDA or not? Because if you don't bring it to mindful attention, you're going to just react. You're going to act out of reactivity, which is the storehouse consciousness. Your subconscious and unconscious mind are now controlling your thoughts, and you're not even aware of it. Or now they're controlling your actions. So how about this? Here's the simple example, and this mirrors AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, or Narcotics Anonymous, or Child Abuse Anonymous. It's the same logic. What do? If you're in AA, you say, first thing is, hi, my name's David, I'm an alcoholic. And you just own that statement. Well, why do you do that? Because then if you live in the present moment, every time someone offers you a drink, you take a moment of silence before you act and you recite your PDA. In this case, you say, I'm an alcoholic. So you say, so the proper response is no, thank you. I know people who, that's a whole nother story, but anyway, we've been sober 30 years and they still go through the same thing. They're telling them I'm an alcoholic. Because I asked a guy once, I said, what do you mean you're an alcoholic? You've been sober 30 years. He said, no, you don't understand AA. The way it works is before I have an opportunity to drink, I take a moment of silence and I remind myself what's important now. Well, I'm just saying, why don't you do that with everything? Or with whatever you are determining as your higher calling. I'm not telling you what to do. I don't know what you want to do in your life. What I am doing is saying, you know what? There's a how-to here that builds on everything that we've learning in key principles that can help if you just choose to carve out a path. Okay, it's about breaking that cycle of activity, conscious and unconscious, that is controlling you more than you know. I gotta go faster. Okay, exercise 7. Rich already talked about this in his whole his whole program. Exercise 7 is being an otomo, right? It's taking exercise 5, which is, can you just give people 100% of your attention when you're talking to them? Okay, that's like a baby step to number 7. Number 7 is, can you not only give someone your attention, but now you have an expanded periphery. And now you can anticipate someone's needs and respond before being asked. That's what an otomo is doing, right? They are so aware, they're practicing awareness training. Well, you can do that in daily life. Why not just otomo for your family? So you're not only giving people 100% of your attention, but you're trying to understand, what do they really need and how can I serve them? You know, when Toi Sensei was in China, he had, by the time he came back in the military, because he ended up taking on another whole, I don't know if they called it battalion or group or whatever, but he had 80 people that he was bringing back under his command. And he talked about that as, that was his service. His service was for the other people. That was his task. And remember, that's when he first experienced Fudoshin, that's talked about in Saikontan, for the very first time. And he recognized, when I have an immovable mind, guess what? I have Fudo-tai, an immovable body. And he said to himself, I noticed when I was performing a task, serving others, in this case, serving 80 other people for whom he was responsible, he said, when I felt relaxed and centered, and I was calm, and I was positive, it always went better. And as I told you before, those were the seeds of the 4 basic principles. You know, this didn't just come up in a vacuum. So I'm trying to share who is Koichi Tohei Sensei, our founder, Soshu Tohei, and help you to kind of understand that he had a path too. And there's a logic, because it all connects, because Toi Sensei was extremely logical and wanted everything to be very clear. Okay, so now you probably realize, anyone who's otomoed realize, boy, I didn't do that very well. And so what you realize is 2 more things you need. You need to be much more calm. And so that's why the next 2 exercises, which I hardly need to explain, is breathing and meditation. Okay, so what do? You're the otomo, you're trying to put service in your daily life, and you go, you know what? I need to be a lot more calm than I am. So you need to build on those moments of silence, exercise 2, 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes in the day, 5 minutes in the evening. We all know that's not enough. That's just a little taste to get you started. So you need to develop a regimen of breathing and meditation, because that's going to help you go from 3rd order to 2nd order to 1st order. It's all laid out. The book explains it. It's the exact same thing Toi Sensei teaches. So I'm not going to take time now since I'm so late. I will say that in dynamic meditation, I'm reading down here on how do you feel. What happens to your overall sensitivity and awareness when you let go of all relative thinking? Expansion and contraction is purposeful imagery only. So I just wanted to say, this idea of, you know, kakudaiho, half, really big, toitsuho, half, really small, you do realize that's still relative thinking, right? You're creating this whole framework of I'm in here and then it's going out and it's going in. It's learning how to do it so well, like driving a stick shift that I explained before, that now you can do it not thinking, shirio in Japanese, not thinking, fushiro in Japanese, but hishiro, without thinking. You just master the process. You let go of expansion, you let go of half, because, you know, when you go way out there, as far as you can go and you can't get any more, it's the exact same as when you're going deep, half, so small and you can't go any smaller. It's the same thing. It's you are experiencing nothing in particular. So this is something that has to be learned and cultivated, but that's exercise 9, key meditation. Okay, so imagine now you're on your path, and you know how to change your state. You know, because you've been training, and you know you can get very, very calm. Some days your breathing and meditation, I get it, are terrible. And you go, man, I just can't get out of my monkey mind today. But other times are like exceptional. Well, build on that, because you yourself trained yourself to understand what is that state. So now in daily life, when stress happens, when you need it most, you're faced with a really big challenge and it's obvious to you, your upper side, you're tense, you're reactive. Use your training. Ask yourself, what should I do? Boom. Keep one point, keep weight underside, relax completely. Put yourself in that mental, physical, and emotional state consistent with calmness. And you know what you're doing? You're learning how to control your life, because you've now learned how to control your mind. It's no longer running away with you. So this is a choice. You can choose to be stressed out and be a bobber and be reactive, or you can choose to be grounded, focused, in alignment with your Tenshoku. So exercise number 10 is using times of stress to really change your state. Exercise 11 is easy to summarize. At a conscious level, can you just try to practice this all day long? Right? That's all it is. It's now, I think I wrote, where's your mind? You're now applying lessons learned, having practiced exercises 1 through 10 in daily life. You're now prepared for change, not just in times of crisis. That was the last exercise, number 10, but throughout the day, because you're clear about your goals in the service of others. You're now seeing your life as a whole now, thinking and acting in accord with your highest aspirations. I'm jumping down. What did I learn? Instead of reacting mindlessly, that is unconsciously, right? This chapter is about conscious action. You're now being conscious throughout the day. So your speech and your action is in accordance with your PDA. What's the Saikontanism here? It's exactly there. In Saikontan, they talk about, not only is there the superior person, right, that the Junsu that becomes the Shensu, the sage, but there's also what's referred to in Chinese as a Xiaojin. Xiao is the same character for small, Gen person, a small person. That's Shoga. That's your ego self, okay? That's the reactive person, the one that's not mindful, the one that's not living in accord with anything, right? So it's not a flattering comment, but the contrast is a Xiaojin, a small person, is contrasted with, in Japanese, a taiga, your greater self, your universal self. So what you're tapping into now is the possibility of living your life not with shoga in mind, but with taiga. Okay, so that's conscious action, but the next 2 exercises are to help you go deeper, deeper, deeper. Because while you might be able to live keeping yourself in check consciously, that doesn't mean that subconscious desires and habits are not still coming up, okay? These are the things in your storehouse consciousness called sankharas, dispositions that are there from your past experience that you're holding in your consciousness. So number 12, I think of it as kakudai ho in a big way. Be in and with nature. Can you get out of your own way enough to actually experience your deep connection to nature? Toi Sensei, by the way, calls this kaiden. Why should I do it? Learn to witness the ongoing teaching that nature and your environment is providing at all times. Might sound a little Taoist, but kaiden is the rank above okuden. In other words, someone doesn't give you, okuden is the highest. But actually, Toi Sensei says, what's higher is to learn from nature. Nature is your teacher, right? So, Tamura Sensei's passed away, Toi Sensei's passed away, Suzuki Sensei's passed away. Nonaka Sensei's passed away. So many of my teachers are gone. So what do I do? Pout? Or do I say, no, thank you very much with gratitude, and now continue to learn from everybody else, including you, right? We always have teachers if we have a mind that has a beginner's mind and we're receptive. If you're an expert, nothing else will come in, right? Your sponge is full, so you're not going to progress. But progressing this deeply to try to get to understand your subconscious habits, that's what exercise 12 and 13 is about. So I like to say this, you know, the temple that we moved from Nagoya, Heiseiji, to the Furman campus, that is just a beautiful place to sit and experience your connection with nature. I mean, I am so grateful that we have this just incredible place. You know, the place could be wherever you are, but it's like purposefully designed to help you just experience this connection to the Japanese garden, the way it's constructed. People say, oh, you know, the place of peace is locked so often. I want to go inside and see it. And I tell people, there's nothing to see inside the place of peace but yourself. There's no furniture. There's no artwork. There's Toi Sensei's calligraphy, Shimpo Uchure Kan no Soku Genjo. That's it. And then there's Zafu and Zabuton to sit on. So this is exercise 12. You're turning the mirror of your consciousness outward in a way to surface what's really going on deeply within yourself. Exercise 13 is called be in and with all your emotions. This is probably the longest exercise in the book because this never stops. No one ever stops doing exercise 13. It never ends. And if you stop it, your key stops. So don't think that way. But this is turning the mirror inside. So I'm going to read here from Where's Your Mind? Building upon self-honesty, exercises 3 and 6, coupled with first order calmness, you can now surface previously hidden subconscious and unconscious causal forces that influence you. By extending and expanding your awareness internally, you are now able to shine a light upon heretofore dark areas of your consciousness. Embracing the difficult work of ongoing self-examination serves as the seed, the water, and the sunshine of your continued journey. It's like right out of Saikontan. You know, what is that? The seed, the water, the sunshine. Embracing the difficult work. What is that? That's chewing. That's discourses on vegetable roots. That's, you know, the person who can find delight in eating the most bitter root. That's the sage. But it takes work, you know, or another Saikontan, you know, the wind is not held by the bamboo. Well, what would hold it? These are your subconscious attachments that hold things, okay? So it's gonna keep happening unless you surface it and begin to work with it. How about the reflection of the geese over the frozen lake? The lake doesn't hold on to it, the reflection, because the lake doesn't have any bad habits, but we do. And so we have to really look at our life seriously, deeply, if you really want to take this to a whole nother level. That's different than just maybe improving the quality of your life. You're now asking yourself, what is my life, and what am I really doing? And as you do that, I think now you're getting to that image that Toi Sensei always referred to as you can be the captain of your ship, right? Now you have a deep keel, you have a rudder, you have a plan, you know what you're doing, you understand how to change your state, you understand how to apply deep calmness in your daily life, and you practice 24/7. But still, right, you know, negative things are gonna come in. I tell people, the last time I saw a scary movie was 1976, the first version of The Omen. Because I was reading Toi Sensei Shokushu on the subconscious and plus life, and he says, stop putting negative things into your subconscious. Well, I saw that movie. I was in Honolulu, first year graduate school, I think. I think that was right. And it was like, I had nightmares for like a month. The omen was really scary to me. And dreams is when your subconscious mind shows itself. So I thought to myself, well, this is easy. Toy Sensei said, stop putting those drops in. Okay, but I do watch the news, so there's plenty of negative stuff. I do not find violence entertaining in entertainment. And I can choose to not put that in my subconscious. I couldn't believe I actually paid money to go into a movie theater so I could have nightmares for like a month or two. So I thought, well, this is easy to correct, right? Okay, and number 14, I talked about last time. It's just putting all this together, but with a focus on service. You know, your life is going to be more meaningful. Your Tenshoku is going to be more meaningful if the purpose of your life is more than just you, that you have a mission to help other people, to leave this world a better place. You know, it's a lifelong process that is articulated in Saikontan. I've now gone like 56 minutes, which is a world record. I apologize. Thank you for all your questions. Rich, I'm going to turn it over to you, but I'm mindful that really not wanting to keep this over an hour, but I will tee up next week. Matthew Atarian from Japan, he's been training in Japan for 3 years now. And I asked him, he's the one that put the EKF YouTube channel together. He was the inspiration behind all of this, really. And I asked him, and he has agreed to be the person who leads our session. And he'll be sharing his experience, noticing the difference of training in Japan and learning to become completely fluent, which he is now. Of course, he'll say he's not, but to me, he's like totally fluent. He's just done some remarkable things, and he has benefited from so many teachers there that have been watching over him and guiding him, and it's really a wonderful thing. So that's next week. Okay, Rich, thank you for your patience, everyone. I hope you found some of this in these last 4 sessions, something you can use or that's meaningful.
Very much. Thank you, Sensei.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sensei. So there are no questions in the chat area, but I'm sure that's not going to stop people from emailing or texting. And I know that there was one question about making sure that the content that's in your book was available. So I think part of the follow-up would be just to reinforce where this material can be found. And that's something we can do in subsequent emails.
Okay, okay, yeah. Well, the book's easy to get, but if that's the question, yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So thank you, Sensei. This concludes the 4-part series, and new announcement for next series will be sent out over the weekend, and we look forward to seeing everyone again next week. Again, email channels are wide open for any questions if they come up in your practice. Any other parting words, Sensei? Otherwise, we'll sign off.
Gratitude, you know. I wouldn't have been able to do this and do all this preparation and think back on the powerful influence of Saikontan if it didn't just spontaneously come up, because it was connected to that basics of the basics of the basics. And I do know from so much mail that, at least for some of you, it's been very worthwhile and it's helped you to understand our founder more deeply. You know, the inspiration I hope you'll take away is it's all about ki in daily life. You can be a dojo expert, you can learn techniques and throw people around really great, but it'll end there. And Toy Sensei would say, oh, well, he's a dojo expert or she's a dojo expert. The real value is you know, just try. These exercises that I just laid out for you are just so simple because you can do this all the time. You're by yourself or you're with other people, and that's all you need. So there should be nothing holding you back. So, you know, these 7 arts, I didn't talk about the arts and how they go, but I did point where they're available. I can tell you they work because the same 7 arts, as soon as I finished this book, I told you on May 20th, the day before I turned 50, I realized, oh my God, these same 7 arts, this is what I've been doing as a business consultant, leading change with all these organizations. People would ask me, David, how do you do this? And I'd say, I don't know, I'm making it up as I go. Or, I don't know, it's Aikido in a business suit. But once I had this structure, I realized that's exactly what I was doing. So I'm just going to tell you, whether you're leading change for yourself, that's personal development, living with the wind at your back, or if you're at work and you're trying to change the organization maybe that you're a part of, you might be interested in the 7 arts of change because it builds upon the same principles. It's just that I am talking about it in a corporate setting. So same stuff. Toi Sensei, you know, he's a genius, right? Laying in bed, pleurisy, feeling this ideal to the point that it changed his posture. He was resonating to it. He memorized so he could get back to that state of a unified mind and body. And finally, through his teachers and his work, using daily life as a whetstone for him to discover the treasure of key testing, the treasure of the 4 basic principles. And we should all be grateful because he and his son have dedicated their lives to helping us understand this path that can improve the quality of your life, help you to live the life of your dreams. I know it has for me, and I've got nothing to say but gratitude. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sensei.
ありがとうございました。